Welcome to the podcast about venture capital, where investors and founders alike can learn how VCs make decisions and reach conviction. Your host is Nick Moran, and this is The Full Ratchet.
Welcome back to TFR for another edition of Investor Stories. On this segment, the experts talk about a startup that failed and the causes of that failure. Here's the segment called Post-Mortems.
On today's special segment, we have Henrique Dubugras of Brex. Henrique, can you tell us a story about a previous business or an initiative that failed and why it failed?
Yeah, so I tried to start this education company that helped other Brazilian students with the US application process. And turned out that we had a problem in which we had a lot of interested students, but none of their parents were willing to pay for anything that we were doing. Because in Brazil, they didn't think their kid had a chance or wanted to, or, to go study abroad. So we had a lot of people who were interested, but none of which could afford what we were selling. And so therefore it wasn't very attractive for, as a business.
On today's special segment, we have Nikhil Basu Trivedi. Nikhil, can you tell us a story about a portfolio company that failed and why it failed?
Yeah, I think, a company like Block, which I was involved with, BLOC, Block.io, didn't end up fulfilling its promise. This was an online coding bootcamp business. And if you remember, there were a number of businesses that were growing quickly in the coding bootcamp space at the same time as Block. There were in-person bootcamps like Dev Bootcamp and Hack Reactor. There were several online options as well. And Block ended up being acquired by Thinkful, which then was acquired by Chegg. But it wasn't the outcome that we hoped it would be. And I think a part of the challenge is it's just very hard to stand out and differentiate in that space. And it certainly was at that time. I think if you look at the industry now, the one model that has stood out is Lambda School, which offered a very different product for its students through ISAs and also built a differentiated brand. And the story, of course, is not yet fully played out there, but Lambda School seems to be one company in that space that has bucked the trend, and a lot of the others have unfortunately not worked.
On today's special segment, we have Czech Warner of Ada Ventures. Czech, can you tell us a story about a portfolio company that failed and why it failed?
So I won't talk about a specific company, but I will talk about some companies that I've experienced failing. And I will say that I've only been investing for 5 years. So actually, I have a lot more failure ahead of me by virtue of just the time. But I think this one example and others that I've seen, have come about because the founder has actually given up, has actually quit. And I think that's something that we don't really talk about enough in venture generally. We don't talk about failure, and we don't talk about that one of the biggest reasons why startups fail is because the teams actually quit. And I think this came down to a founder that was a perfectionist, that wanted everything to be absolutely perfect. And as we know in startups, there's no such thing as perfect, and you have to be comfortable in imperfection. And I think that the lack of progress, or kind of this not living up to the very high standards that this founder set themselves, actually meant that they kind of ended up giving up on the product before, and the company before it was even necessary to do so. So that's been something that myself and my partner have learned, when it comes to investing in new companies, we're looking for people who will not quit.
Is that something you're attempting to actively screen for up front?
Yeah, so that's one of the qualities that we look for. It's this idea of relentlessness, this grit, because if a founder is prepared to show up and, we have this, obviously, as I'm British, I'm going to talk about cricket because cricket is our kind of national game apart from football. But there's this poem that I absolutely love, and one of the lines is stick at the wicket and the runs will come. And so that's kind of when you're playing cricket, you stick at the crease, and if you stay there long enough, then you will score lots of runs. And I love that metaphor because I think as founders, if you just stay at it and just stay on the journey, the runs or the success will come.
On today's special segment, we have Brian Hirsch of Tribeca Venture Partners. Brian, can you tell us a story about a portfolio company that failed and why it failed?
I'll share one that's one from Fund One that was unfortunate. And actually, the founder of that company is now running one of our other portfolio companies, and he's doing a great job. But it was a company called Nimble TV. Actually, my partner Chip helped kind of create with the founder, and Nimble TV. Essentially, what created this was 2010, 2011. I think it's 2011. They created a solution where you can essentially have a sling box in the cloud, and so you would sign up for Nimble TV, and then Nimble TV would direct you to get like a direct TV account. They would then essentially put that box. Think about it in they would host that box, and then if you had a browser or any iPad or any device, you got to put yourself back in 2011. The very early days of the iPad, you can watch any of your programs anywhere on any browser. And so that was a really good product. People really liked it. We invested, Greycroft invested. We actually had Tribune Company invested, and we were making great progress in signing on lots of accounts. But unfortunately, there was another company in New York called Aereo that was backed by Firstmark, that you may be familiar with, that was taking a different approach to this market, as they were putting small antennas on the tops of roofs and doing more of an over-the-air solution. The difference between the two is that in the case of Nimble TV, you would sign up for Nimble, but someone was getting paid. So DirecTV, was getting a paid customer, and then DirecTV turned around and paid all those content providers. In the case of Aereo, it was over-the-air, and so Aereo would charge, and they argued that those over-the-air signals are free for consumers, and we don't have to pay anyone for that programming. That they got sued and went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and they lost. And Aereo essentially got shut down. And at that time, Nimble was trying to raise a new round of financing. And the issue for Nimble TV is that the Supreme Court said Aereo was illegal, but no one asked them about Nimble TV. We weren't sued, but it became really impossible to fund the company. No one really wanted to touch it because they were concerned that Nimble TV could be next, even though we had a completely different approach to the market. Yikes. So we ended up having to sell the assets to a company called Cinecor in Buffalo, and to turn it all full circle. As it stands today, Anand Subramanian, who was the founder of Nimble TV, is now the CEO of our portfolio company Tenter, and the founder of Cinecor, George Shimon, is now the CEO of portfolio company ACV Auctions, which is the first unicorn ever in Buffalo, where I had led the Series A. So a loss of capital on an investment, but it turned into I think one clear winner and one other company that's performing well, where we were able to work with that founder again in another fun company. So
long cycle business.
Long cycle business.
That will conclude this installment of Investor Stories. If you're enjoying the program and would like to see it continue, take a moment and leave a 5-star review in iTunes. Also, if you'd like updates on new content from TFR, as well as the top 10 VC articles every week, go to fullratchet.net and sign up for the newsletter. Okay, that will wrap things up for today. Until next time, over-prepare, choose carefully, and invest confidently. Thanks for joining me.